Hello and welcome back to Book Banter. Victoria Griffin is a professional editor, a represented author, and the owner of Blue Pen. As a professional editor, Victoria has worked with genres including literary fiction, suspense, horror, thriller, romance, historical fiction, sci-fi, fantasy, and memoir. She teaches in-person workshops on topics related to editing, querying literary agents, and working with a professional editor. Victoria's short fiction has appeared in more than 40 publications. She is passionate about the Appalachian culture, and most of her writing is set in the South. Her stories often include literary and suspense elements. She is the author of Craft Your Query, a workbook, and Edit Like a Pro, a self-editing guide. While playing Division I softball, Victoria suffered a brain injury that led to the best things in her life: her career supporting authors and the writing community, her work with Blue Pen, and the many days and nights spent exploring the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Please welcome Victoria to Book Banter. Hello.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. This is fantastic. We've known each other for almost 5 years now, which is hard to believe. It's gone by very quickly. Though we've never met in person, which is always fascinating to me because I think we know each other quite well, but we've never actually met in person. So
we'll have to rectify that sometime.
We really will. I'm coming to you because it's warmer there.
That's fair.
So what's interesting, though, is you've been deeply involved in all 5 of my novels. In fact, one of the most inspiring and mind-boggling aspects of our relationship is how in tune you are with whatever story I am attempting to tell. So I definitely have a few questions. So first of all, let's start with, how did you begin your career as an editor?
Yeah, so my road to freelance editing was a little bit strange. Not the planned route by any means. I was planning to go get my MFA after I graduated with my bachelor's, mostly because I didn't know what else to do. I was going into my senior year of college, and like a lot of college seniors, was kind of crossing my fingers and hoping I would figure it out. So that was the plan. I played softball in college, and as you mentioned, I had a brain injury my senior year. And as I recovered, I wound up getting my degree somehow.
That's amazing.
I think most people who knew me during that time will say that I should have deferred. I think that's probably true, but got my degree. And then I wanted to do something, but I had to have full control over my environment and my time. I couldn't go work a 9 to 5. That wasn't on the table. And grad school was definitely off the table. Yeah. So at the time, I had a bit of a Twitter following, and I just reached out and said, hey, does anybody need editing? Got a couple of clients at, low rates, as you tend to do when you're just starting out.
Yeah, for sure.
And after I did a couple, I fell in love with it. Like, hey, I wonder if I could make a career out of this. So I, dug my heels in and turned it into a full-time gig.
And you definitely can make a career out of it. I'm here to affirm that you can.
It can be done. Just takes a lot of hours.
It does. Yes, exactly. It's anything you train for, it takes hours, whether it's in a classroom or in the real life experience. Yes. And the good news is that all of that work of training towards the real life is actually very applicable. Yes. So, and like you say, you can control your environment.
Right. And, as an author, a small business owner, anytime you're being an author, so an independent author especially, is a lot like getting into freelancing. You have to learn a lot of that business stuff.
You do. You do. It's important. And you should know it, I think. Even if you hire it out at some point, you should know all the ins and outs of your own business before you hand over the reins. I think that's a very empowering place to come from.
Definitely.
Yeah, not easy.
No.
Empowering.
Especially for folks who majored in English.
Yeah, and math is not one of our skills.
No, no.
Not at all.
Thank
You're
goodness for calculators.
Gosh, yeah, I don't, and iPhones that have calculators on them. I
Yes.
use it for everything. And your business has definitely grown and changed over the past few years. Can you tell us a bit more about how Blue Pen helps authors achieve their goals?
Yeah. So at this point, we do a little bit of everything. When I started expanding Blue Pen, I really expected to keep it in the editing side. And then the thing that really pushed me over the edge was when I kept hearing stuff from our clients talking about all of these scams that are out there now. Vanity presses, these predatory self-publishing companies that are either scamming authors out of their money or producing this really low quality work. And I'm invested in the industry. I'm invested in the writing community, and I'm sitting here looking at Blue Pen and I'm like, we can do something. I can at the very least turn this into something that can provide authors with a high quality option, a trustworthy option. So now we really focus on helping authors create books that are of similar quality to traditionally published work.
Yes.
So the resources are out there. If you have good professionals working on your book, there's no reason that you can't create something that will look at home on the shelf next to something put out by big publishers.
Absolutely. And I think that that's key. Not only because there is that gatekeeper aspect to traditional publishing, but the timeline. Like that was one of my biggest quandaries about it. Not that I would never traditionally publish, because I would definitely consider it. I think I would actually enjoy being a hybrid author personally. But from the time you actually go through the process of having your manuscript accepted could be up to 2 years. And at any one point before somebody hits publish on that print, your book could be pulled from the queue.
Yes.
And I thought, I'm not sure that I'm really willing to stake the majority of my career on somebody else with that control, So,
and as as an author myself, I'm going the traditional route, and I can testify that yes, the timeline is very different.
It is, isn't it? I mean, the only thing holding independent authors back is themselves. So,
and sometimes budget
right now. Sadly. But so as an author, how do you balance your own writing with editorial needs of other authors? Like what does a day in your life look like? Because I know my day's full and I don't deal with anybody else's work. So
yes, my days are definitely full. I wear a lot of hats these days, and it seems like I just keep adding more hats. The biggest thing for me personally is to give myself permission to not be 100% productive every single day and to not try to do it all. When I try to do it all, I do nothing. So it's just the biggest thing is prioritizing each day, having a couple of things that I want to accomplish each day, focusing on that. And with writing specifically, allowing myself to be a little more flexible about, when, where, and how I write.
Yeah.
And it changes. So, what does a day look like for me? It changes week to week. For right now, for instance, normally I do my best writing in the morning. So I'd be writing in the morning on my laptop, but lately haven't been able to do it. Don't know why, some kind of mental block. It's not working. So I've been writing by hand in my notebook in the evenings.
Oh,
and it's going a lot better.
Interesting. I think the flexibility is the key.
Mhm.
And it's interesting that you say that because I recently had to do a similar shift of I in my type A brain wants to write in the morning
Mhm.
because I'm convinced that that is my best time spent and before email, before anything else. But life hasn't allowed that. So I find myself changing positions, like not writing at the desk, but moving somewhere else
Yes.
and working that way. So
Yeah.
it's interesting. And I have to say it's a lot messier right now because I have papers with handwritten notes everywhere and I have like it's not as streamlined as and as tidy as I'd like it, but I
Mhm.
don't think the story will suffer because of it.
Yes. And
So
sometimes it's not about even what works best for you, but
yeah,
what works best for you right now. It doesn't always have to be the same.
that's true. That's very true. Yeah. Because things do change. I mean,
Yeah.
if anything, if COVID's taught us anything,
Yes.
it's that
Yes.
we can't really count on what we think is in our head for stability. We have to create things in amongst chaos. And
Yes.
I don't think that um, authors were really good at that in the beginning. And I think we're figuring it out, but deadlines, a lot of deadlines got pushed.
Yeah. And it makes it hard, especially when you do have different hats that you wear, different projects that you're working on. It's hard not to feel like when I'm writing, I feel like I should be working on something for Blue Pin.
Right.
When I'm working
Yeah.
on Blue Pin, I feel like I should be writing. And it's hard. It's a constant, battle to get those feelings out of the way and just
Absolutely.
focus on being in the moment.
That's the key. Yeah. Meeting yourself where you're at.
Yes. Yes. Great way to say it.
And having grace. I could use a little extra heaping of grace every now and again.
I think we all can.
It's been a tough couple of years here, so you know. But so one of the things that I often contemplate is when I first shared my writing with you, I will admit I was very nervous that my writing voice would be lost. To be honest, it probably wasn't actually fully vetted at that point, but regardless, I had the concern that it would be edited out. And to my delight, your insightful view into my novel went far deeper than voice. You maintained the voice of the story, but you began asking such intriguing questions of me and of the story. And that was my first glimpse into the magic of what it is you do. And it's magic. It's magic, friends, trust me. So most authors and readers might assume that an editor simply corrects grammar or sentence structure and looks at the high level story structure. But that's not necessarily the case. So you have this knack for being able to draw out of me all that I've left off the page. And I've said this before because it literally happens every single time. And it feels like you jump inside my head and highlight all the things that I didn't include. But the funny thing is I haven't included those things because I chickened out myself. I saw the problem and went, no, I don't want to go there. This is gonna be too hard. I don't want to do it. And without fail, you point out those exact items almost like verbatim for what's in my head that I think that I've craftily managed to get around somehow. And I don't know how you do it. So I want to know how you do that. How do you know what an author is intending for a story but is missing? Is that really that obvious that something's missing? And curiously, do you do this with every manuscript you edit, or is it just that my work's that easy to read between the lines of? I know it's a fire hose of questions, so I apologize. I guess I'm basically just asking, what's the secret sauce that allows you to shift a manuscript from where it is to where it can be with all of its potential intact? Like, how do you do that?
I love calling it the secret sauce. Editing is a lot like writing in a way. in many ways, but this one specifically, when you're writing a book, a lot goes into it.
Yes.
A lot of pieces, a lot of building blocks. There's a lot of time spent trying to work out, okay, if I change this plot point, then it's going to do this. What's going to be best for this story, and what's going to be best for the reader experience?
Yes.
And a lot of that is almost mathematical to a point. You're
There's
really
my fault. That's where I'm failing, is the mathematical.
well, I think you know what I mean. There's, you see these building blocks that the reader does not see. When the reader reads the book, it's that magic. It's just a fully formed story, and they're able to get lost in this story without thinking about what makes it tick.
Yes, exactly.
So
exactly. That's
with
the
editing, and it if it's done well, especially, then they're really not thinking about what makes it tick.
Yes, exactly.
Editing is the same way. Even those big recommendations, even if they seem like they come out of nowhere, they're based on something. So editing it all starts with those basic building blocks, with understanding the objective concepts that make a good story. Tension, conflict, characterization, just going back to the fundamentals. And when I start looking at a manuscript with developmental editing, I'm looking for those things. Do I see something that's lacking? Do I see something that's that is causing some kind of issue with this story? And then you take it and say, all right, now how can I fix this? And how can it be fixed within the context of this story, and within the context of the author's intention, the author's voice, and that is part of it, understanding what is the author trying to say, why are they writing this story, because the recommendations for making developmental changes are really going to vary based on that. So
okay.
The fact that I make so many recommendations that are in line with what you have thought of previously, I definitely do that with other authors, but not to the extent.
Oh, interesting.
And I would attribute that, I don't know. I think that a lot of that is just the fact that you understand those fundamental building blocks. So when I say things like that to some authors, especially less experienced authors, it may be more of a surprise. They may not even notice that, they may not even notice that the pacing is off, or that this area is lacking tension, or they may notice something is off, but they don't know how to pinpoint it.
Right.
So it's more of a surprise when I come back with those recommendations. I think you're a step ahead there. you already either have you've started the process.
Yeah. What's funny is I write very intuitively, and only in the last couple of years have I tried to bring in a little bit more of the true science behind it, the true, story structure, because like a lot of authors think in terms of scenes and think in terms of pinch points and things like that. And I don't think that way. So I don't label it. But that's all why it's so surprising to me when you come back with like literally the exact thing that was in my head. Like, so for all you readers of Becoming Mrs. Smith, I avoided the ending. And it was Victoria who pushed me to include the ending. It's not that the ending was going to change at all. It was just going to be pushed off to another book. So, so for all of those comments of, that you were reading the ending and crying in a restaurant or at Whole Foods. I apologize.
I'll take part of the blame. But that is with us. You could say that, okay, we've been working together for a while, so I am very familiar with your writing, and you could put it on that. Why we have so many of those things where I point out what you were thinking. But yeah, it started on book 1.
It did.
It's
It
always.
Really that's what's so intriguing to me is you'll use the words that I'll know that I have purposely avoided it. But the difference is I don't necessarily know how to fix it. So that's where it shifts. So if an author was to come to you, what can they expect? So what would be like the typical novel development look like from beginning to end with an editor? I already know the answer to this.
So first things first, whether you're self-editing or working with a professional, you always work high to low. So starting with developmental editing, story level editing, and then working your way down to prose level editing. That's important so that you're not wasting those prose level edits on scenes, chapters, chunks of your book that are going to be rewritten or, cut. I know it hurts.
I'd rather cut than add.
So that's why we work high to low. So we start with developmental editing, and that covers, a lot of the things that we have been talking about so far. Your characterization, pacing, structure, plot, that sort of thing. And then after the developmental edit, we do a phone call with the author, and then send it back to them for revisions. And then typically they will send it back to us for a reread, which is kind of like a quick version of developmental edit, just to, check out the revisions, see if there's anything else we need to address. And then once that is done, we move on to a line edit, which can be one of the more intimidating types of edits for authors, I think.
Yes, I would agree.
Yeah, that's where we're really going in and digging into that prose, looking for the 4 C's: clarity, concision, consistency, and correctness. So,
interesting. Okay.
Tightening up the prose, eliminating ambiguity, redundancy. It's very more of a technical type of editing, but there is some subjectivity to it. So it is really important to work with someone who's familiar with your genre and age category, because they're going to be really responsible for highlighting your voice. And I say highlighting and not maintaining, because a good line edit should make your voice shine even more.
Yes, and it does, because I'm always amazed at how flipping a sentence from, taking what's at the end and putting it at the front changes the empowerment of that sentence.
Yeah.
It's crazy, and it's not something I think to do on my own. So thankfully you're there.
Yes, sorry, my phone decided to go off. It was on silent, but
it wasn't
technology
silent.
Technology is not listening to me today. Those little changes can make a big difference. And I say with line editing, a lot of the time we're kind of cutting the dead weight in the prose. Yes. So carving out a lot of that will make what's left shine even brighter.
So it's really good to note that there's no point in making things flowery and expanding on things if there's not a purpose to the story, because it will get cut. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And like I said, a good line editor too will be brutally honest, and will not spare your feelings. So my personal editing style, and one of the things I emphasize with our editors at Blue Pen, is we want to be honest and tough, and we're not gonna leave things that need to be changed, but we also, number one, treat it as a learning experience. So even in a line edit, there are comments saying, here's why I'm making this change. Here's what you can look out for to avoid this in the future. And number two, we're not shy about saying, oh my God, this was an awesome line, or this scene made me cry, or amazing metaphor. I still want to encourage authors and, share with them when I'm impressed with their work.
Absolutely. And it's appreciated. It is. Because then, okay, I got the point across. I hit the mark. Yeah. And it's nice to see it sprinkled through in amongst all the things that are no longer there.
Oh gosh. And then after the line edit is a proofread, and that's it.
Yes, that is the final stretch. That is the end. And then an author can send it out to their beta readers and then their advanced readers and everything like that, which is nice. Which is that, and it's not a quick process. It is a long process, but one that's well worth it. You can take a basic story and turn it into something really spectacular with the process. So I love that about it. It's not that I love every aspect of it, but I do
like the finished product, right?
I like the finished product. That's usually where I'm like, okay. Well, I actually think I'm going to start calling you Yoda because I'm still learning. And one of the greatest gifts that your editing has given me as an author, aside from the nudge to do all the things that are difficult but necessary, is the reminder to trust myself. Authors write in solitude and have only their own viewpoint to explore a story, which is at best limiting. And every single time you've asked me to go deeper with the story, I am actually amazed at how you point out the exact points of concern I've had. The biggest difference, and this is the crucial part, you know how to guide me to go deeper and move the story forward. And my favorite part of the editing process is actually our one-on-one phone calls. That's where the story gets air in its tires, and when we talk the details about how to make it better. So I'm wondering, do you find that happens with the most of the stories you edit, where the author sort of sees those aha moments of they knew something was wrong, but now they know how to go forward, and it's like they're excited again to jump back into the story?
Yes.
You see that?
Yes, I do. By the time an author gets to me, they're usually pretty burnt out.
Yes.
They've been working on this for months at the least, years quite often. So they've written, and then they've edited, and then they've sent to betas, and then they've edited again and revised and rewritten and rinse and repeat. And by the time which is the way it should be, by the time you reach a professional editor, you should have done everything that you can do to make the story the best it can be.
I agree.
So at that point, they're ready to throw the manuscript at the wall. They're pretty much done. They're like, just take it.
I'm literally like, ooh, it's not on my desk anymore.
Yes.
Thank goodness. This is not my problem for the next 6 weeks.
Yeah. So then, part of what an editor does is giving that objective perspective and helping the author see the book from new angles. Seeing it from that new perspective gives them, that different look at it. And in a lot of cases, it's almost like the very first time brainstorming, and when they first started writing it, because it's like they're seeing it with fresh eyes for the first time, and they've got all these ideas flowing. I've given some direction, and then usually on that post-developmental phone call, I can just hear the wheels turning in their head as they're thinking of all the new directions that they can take it. And I love that.
That's got to be rewarding. It's got to be rewarding. I think it does add, it definitely adds a lot to the story, but it adds to the author's experience as well. And
Mhm.
I think that you can go from being so excited to get rid of something off your desk to welcoming it back, but with fresh eyes.
Yes.
And, it's not as hard to, kill your darlings when you've been away from them for a while.
Yes. That time makes a really big difference.
It does. There's no point in ever rushing an edit.
Mm-mm.
There's no point, because you, as an author, you need that space. And an editor needs to mull things over because they're seeing some of it for the first time as well.
Mhm.
So you both need the space and the time to do it. So don't ever rush through that process. That's probably my advice. As hard as it is when you look at a deadline, deadlines can move. Sadly, they can. So one of the other, I wish they didn't, but they do. One of the other aspects of writing or working with an editor is the customized learning that takes place. All the feedback you provide is an opportunity to learn something more, not just about writing, but about my own writing process and how I come to that point. There's a lot of education that comes with hiring an editor. Do you find that most writers are challenged by the same kinds of issues in their writing, or are they each unique to how unique each story is?
A little bit of both. There are definitely those habits, especially that.
Nod my head. Do you see how much I nod my head? This is a real world thing. That's why my characters nod their heads.
Oh, yes. Yes. I'm trying to think what my characters love to do. They nod quite a bit as well. Lots of smiling, grinning,
Yes.
smirking. Yeah, you can call it different things, but it's still
Same thing. Yeah.
So yeah, everybody has those habits, and then the more technical habits, passive constructions. Most people, when it comes to a line edit, most people have 2 or 3 things that they do over and over. Similar sentence structures that aren't effective, or overusing certain phrases. Yeah, there are definitely those things, and especially so on the developmental side. First chapters, you're going to see a lot of the same issues in a bunch of manuscripts. Usually starting too early.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
Yep.
So exposition dumps, those sort of things, you definitely see over and over. But then there is, every manuscript is different, and you definitely see a lot of unique issues and unique fixes depending on the manuscript. The one that comes to mind is actually yours. The only time. That's what you said at the time when I recommended this.
Oh, I'm going to say it's third person point of view.
Nailed it.
Oh.
Yep. Yeah. Only time. I've been editing, goodness, many moons now, and this is the only time that I have recommended that an author mix first and third person, because that's one of those things that you wouldn't do unless there's a really, really good reason. And Tanya had a really, really good reason. And when I suggested rewriting half of the book, oh man.
Do you know the story behind that? Like, when I sat down to write that novel, we're talking about All That Was. When I sat down to write it, I actually said out loud to a friend, I'm going to write this in third person point of view. I think that this would be really a good way to sort of stretch my writing muscles and see how I can do it. And I tried and tried and tried some more for months. And I did research on it, and I was trying to get it just drilled into my head. And I was like, okay, yeah, no, this is just not going to work. I need to be in first person, and that's it. And so I went forward and I wrote the book in first person. And Victoria, in all of her brilliance, this is what I mean about she's inside my head, friends. She came back to me and said, I think it would really benefit if Emily's character was told from the perspective of third point of view. That was a very low moment for me.
I honestly, when you told me that I didn't know when I made the recommendation that she had tried that. And when you told me that, I was just so surprised, because I had been sitting with that edit for at least a few days looking at it, because I thought of it, I saw the issue, and I thought, third person would fix it. But I thought, I am going to go over this and sit with it and see if there is any other recommendation I can make, because just for the sake of consistency, I would not recommend that unless it was absolutely the best and probably the only choice. So I sat with it for a while and then I recommended it. But I will tell you what, working with an author like you, it makes that sort of thing so much easier, because I know, I mean, a lot of authors, you would give that recommendation and they would go, I'm going to not rewrite half my book. But I know that you will do not whatever I say, but whatever is best for the book.
Well,
you're going to do it.
I think that's the difference, though, is that when it comes down to it, you have the stories back. And so I don't look at it as a bad thing, that aside from the hours that you have to spend to rewrite half your book in another point of view.
Sorry about that.
It's all good now. We're going forward in first person now. But you always, your delivery of how to tell an author what needs to change is got a good bedside manner, but the way you stand behind the story comes first. And I think that if authors are willing to do the work, then they should listen to their editor in that regard, because if they've got the story's best interest at heart, then you're golden. You will be when you hit publish anyway. Not necessarily for a few months, but yeah. But it's interesting, because that was a major change for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. And I still don't think that I don't think my third person point of view writing is as strong as my first person point of view.
Well, I do remember during the line edit, I remember telling you, it wasn't necessarily that it wasn't strong, but I could tell that you weren't comfortable.
Yeah, definitely.
You were thinking about it.
Yes. Yeah. I don't like to think about it.
Yeah. Because when you're thinking about the writing, you're not immersed in the story, in the scene, and then your reader's not immersed in the scene.
That was my worry. Exactly. Yeah. And yet when I wrote Elizabeth, I was like putting on her coat, and I could write from her perspective. I could see everything from her perspective and feel everything. But what's interesting is having Emily be third person point of view, it actually made her a little bit more stilted. It made her a little bit more reserved. And that was actually the heart of her character as well.
Yep. It worked.
It did work. It worked really well. It was a really good suggestion. Not an easy one, but a good one. So
POVs are interesting, though, especially. So me, I'm the opposite. I write in third. I very rarely write in first. If I do, it's usually a short story. I can't stay in first. But when I notice that my writing is getting a little off, if I'm having trouble with, just feeling it, for lack of a better word, I will back up and start the scene in first and then transition back to third. And it's like it resets me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That is very interesting, actually, because I would never, ever reach for that as a tool. Yeah. Like, I would be like, yeah, no, let's avoid it like the plague. And
I'd be curious to know if it works in reverse. I'm not sure. I feel like it would be a different benefit, because for me, it's kind of getting the voice back.
Yes, exactly. Which is why I like it so much, because I can slip into a character's voice more easily than in first. That'd be an interesting experiment. I'm sure one of your authors would be willing to test that for you.
Yeah. Ooh, somebody want to try some POV
I know,
experiments.
right? And POVs, honestly, they challenge me in general,
Yeah,
just because it's challenging. So
discipline
speaking
calls.
of books and the way that other writers create, do you actually have a favorite genre to read or write or edit in?
Yeah, so I read, well, just in general. I love literary, upmarket, any kind of speculative,
Mm.
horror, sci-fi, and anything that blends genres. Doesn't even matter what the genres are. I just like
Ah,
things that blend. But my big passion is Appalachian fiction.
yeah.
That's what I write. I read as much Appalachian work as I can get my hands on.
Ah.
I Yeah, there's kind of a gap in the literature, especially by and about modern Appalachians. If you go
Mhm.
look at Appalachian fiction, you're going to find a ton of historical,
Historical. Mhm.
but not a ton about modern Appalachia, and it breaks my heart because I'm from East Tennessee, and we have this really unique culture that persists to today. Appalachia is still a unique place with unique stories. So that's why I I write about Appalachia, because I feel like somebody needs to, and
Yeah.
I'm here. This is my home, and I'd feel a little almost like I'm betraying it to set my story somewhere else.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. I look forward to reading your books, actually.
Thanks.
I really do, because I actually really enjoy the culture as well, from a historical standpoint. So I think that I don't read a lot of contemporary fiction. Um, for I don't know why, but I just don't. It's not. I'm drawn to
Yeah.
the historical, and I don't write a lot of contemporary fiction because do you know how many times I had to look up iPhone what year was?
Oh man, this struggle.
And that's just not interesting to me. I would much rather, and it doesn't stick either. The information doesn't stay. So, you know, I can tell you all about history and the years and the dates, no problem, and that sticks. But yeah,
See, if you write about folks in East Tennessee out in the woods with no
yeah,
electricity or running
there
water,
you
then
go.
yeah,
Then
don't have to look that stuff up.
feels historic, and yet it's modern day.
Yeah. Hey, welcome to Appalachia.
That would be actually really interesting. I am looking forward to. We need to nudge your books along a little, and so that the rest of the world can read them.
Well, I'm on submission right now,
Are
so
you?
you want to go hit up some New York
Yeah.
editors and move it to the top of the pile.
Yeah, I've got them all on speed dial.
Yeah, I figured.
Okay, let's transition to the hot seat. This is
Oh,
always where I ask something that I think is a challenging question, but it may not be a challenging question for you. What is the biggest challenge of being an editor?
yeah, that is definitely a tough question. I'm gonna say something that folks probably don't think of a whole lot. Um, Reading for pleasure.
Oh,
When you are a full-time editor, you are spending hours at the computer reading manuscripts, and
yeah.
it becomes really, really hard to read for pleasures. At the end of the day, your eyes are tired, you have a headache. Don't even think about reading ebooks. That's not going to
No.
happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it makes it a lot more difficult. And you doesn't stop me from buying books, of
Yeah,
course.
that's not hoarding if it's books.
No, absolutely not. You see one of my,
How many
I'm not
books?
going to tell you how many bookshelves I have. It's I do still read for pleasure, but like I say, that is definitely a challenge. You have to
Yeah.
focus on fitting it into your schedule.
And have you ever tried audio? Like, would that be enough of
Oh
a
yes,
switch?
I
Oh,
do a lot of audio, but usually while I'm hiking.
yeah.
So I will take down, I've listened to Stephen King's Revival. I listened to the whole thing while I was doing a section hike a few weeks ago.
Nice.
Fantastic. Love being in the woods, listening to books.
That would be a happy place for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. That refuels the soul.
Yes.
In more ways than one. So that's a good thing. So what would be the most fulfilling aspect of being an editor?
Let's see. We already talked about the post-developmental phone call, which is
That's the best.
Always great. One of the really fulfilling things is when authors come back to you with new work and they have applied lessons from your previous edits. Seeing authors grow in their craft is so great, especially when you had something to do with it and
you're
teaching
the teacher.
them.
I could see that being rewarding. Yes.
Yeah, it's
and
really
that's
great.
I have a document on my desktop that says, follow these steps before submitting to Victoria. And it is a list, and it grows with every book. It grows of go through the steps of check for this, check for that, check, and so that I'm not giving you something over and over again that is the same problem. And you're like, really? You not figured that out yet?
Well, and I love that. I mean, the great thing about that, and the huge reason why, we say that you should do everything that you can do before sending it to an editor, is because the cleaner and tighter it is, the deeper we can go. If we're not working on fixing, problem A, then we can focus more attention on problem B.
And I felt that. I have really felt that your edits get deeper the cleaner the copy you get from me. So I believe that's true. And there's so many tools out there now. I actually hadn't looked at Pro Writing Aid for quite a while because I was always confounded by it. I was like, I don't even know what the suggestions mean, let alone how to apply them. And now, if anybody has been, put off by it before, now is the time to go back and try it, because their insight and resources and how you can dig deeper into why it is creates a learning opportunity for you. And so hopefully this next book that you get will be even cleaner. So
I have no doubt. I will say about those tools. So Pro Writing Aid is the one that I would recommend if somebody is going to check one out. That's the one that professionals tend to use. But always know the rules behind them. Never just trust those tools blindly.
Oh, you'll end up with a mess.
Yes.
If you do.
Yes.
Because it's not consistent. No. And if anybody's ever tried it, you can apply a change, and then that same sentence or that same paragraph will have just as many or more errors by having fixed it. So it just means there's more options. So you really need to know why.
Yeah. Get yourself a copy of the Chicago Manual of Style. Your best friend.
Yes. It's daunting. I'll admit that's daunting.
But just don't try to read it cover to cover. It's
a look up when you need book. Yeah. Yeah. Look it up when you need to know. And that's how you grow your techniques and your knowledge is by case basis. So Blue Pen has grown and evolved a lot in the past few years to a full service companion for authors now.
Yes.
What are the most popular and important services that Blue Pen offers? What do you find people using the most of?
That is a tough question because honestly, with independent publishing, it's all pretty important. I will say, go ahead and group together the editing services. Editing is still our bread and butter. You got to start there.
I agree. If you only have money to spend on one thing, spend it on editing.
Yep.
That would be my suggestion too.
And probably cover design is definitely a huge one for us. people judge a book by its cover. It's got to look nice.
Absolutely. I do. Totally, all the time.
And it's so easy to get excited about cover design too. Yeah. That's the one thing, especially when you've worked so hard on the book and then on editing, and then you get to see that beautiful cover, and it's always fun. I love delivering covers to authors.
It's a lot of fun. I don't know if I've told you, but just in the last few months, we actually went, because the series that I'm working on right now, slowly, is set in Vancouver, Canada. So it's just 40 minutes down the road from me. We actually went out and did a full day photo shoot with model and everything for the upcoming covers.
That's awesome.
And it is so inspiring. I had it all in my head of what I wanted to look for. And I had the best model, and my best friend came with me, and Dave, my husband, was photographer because he has all the skills and, let me tell you, all the equipment. So we spent the day, and it was so neat to see 4 people come together with one common goal and get the image of the cover out of my head into the real world. And so we've got about 14 covers that I'll still send to, be polished up and everything like that. But to start with, so at least the model is there. And that's about how many books I thought would be in the series. So it may take me several years to write these, but I have something to aim towards. So I think that's covers are important for motivating an author as well. So even getting started in that process, once your novel sort of hits to the first editing, you might want to start looking at the cover design, because it'll keep you fueled and moving forward.
Yeah. And, we do that when we have an author that we're working through the whole process with.
Yeah.
We start on the cover design while we're still editing, because we get that information to the designers and let them go ahead and come up with those concepts. So a lot of the time the cover is done earlier, and like you say, it definitely does fuel authors and get them excited about it.
It's so much fun. It's validation. It's like you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's going to happen. It's not just a dream in your head anymore. One that'll be replaced by the next story that comes into your head once this one's done. But, it's still it's the revolving door of stories.
The light at the end of this tunnel before you enter the next one.
Specific. There's a lot of tunnels.
Yes.
It's a process in itself. So I am curious. Blue Pen revolves around the needs of authors and is guided by those needs. Do you have more plans to expand the services, or are you happy with where things are at right now?
Oh, we will continue to expand as long as authors need more stuff. The last thing that we added pretty recently was custom maps.
Oh, I saw that. That was so cool.
Oh, it's so much fun. Much fun. And that just happened because, I had a couple of our authors say, hey, I need a map done for my fantasy book. Do you do anything like that? And I said, no, but I'll see about it. And then I go out and see if I can find a professional that I trust. And that's when I'm looking at adding new services, that's the two things. If there's a demand for it, if some of our authors need it, and if I can find somebody that I trust 100%. If I can't, then we're not going to offer it.
Yeah, there's no halfway. Yeah. No. Absolutely. The maps look fantastic. So if you're a fantasy author, or even a historical author, I would say, if you want, an old map of London or something like that, it looks stunning. And it gives, I think, when you think about how many people are reading ebooks, I think having the map on the ebook as well, it would just, it adds depth to the story. And I know I go back and reference things. Like, I'm one of those readers that will flip back to the cover to see if it actually ties into the story.
Yes. Yeah, I've done that.
Like, wait a minute, this isn't work. Oh, it does, so you can't always get the girl with the blonde hair in the photo. So I try to let go of that a little bit, but it is, I reference it so I could see that with a map as well. Like if somebody gave me a map of New York and the story was set in New York, I would be referencing that map.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And, walking down memory lane at the same time. So that is awesome. I'm glad that it's going so well. I really am, because it is a service that is needed. And there are a lot of, there's a lot of things authors can do on their own, but authors also tend not to want to. And understandably, because it's overwhelming. Like if somebody were to sit down, I've had people ask me, so what do I have to do if I want to, publish my book? I'm like, oh, that's a loaded question. And that would literally be a full-time job for me to tell you how to do that from beginning to end, because it has to be specific to your book, your genre, what you want to do with it. If you want to publish it and give it to your family at Christmas, it's one thing. If you want to publish it and really stake your claim in the book world, that's a completely different thing. And you much more polished.
Yeah, that is. So first thing when somebody comes to us thinking about our services, the first thing we do is talk with them. Okay, what do you need? Some of these companies out there too that just sell packages, and it's not good. But we break it down, and that is one of the first questions we ask is, okay, number one, what's your goal for this manuscript? And then number two, what's your goal for your career? Because those are, you say, it's very different things. And it's very different if some people, especially folks who've written a memoir or something like that, sometimes it's about getting this story out there compared to launching your writing career.
Very different approaches.
Yes.
Yeah. And sometimes they do launch their career sort of the back way, but they hadn't intended it. And I think an intent in anything is really at the crux of how you make decisions.
Yes. You have to know what you want to happen before you can do anything.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. And I think those are good questions. And if you don't know the answer, you do need to dig a little bit deep and determine what it is. Absolutely. Well, I will personally recommend Blue Pen because you are my editor, and I don't have any plans to change that anytime in the future.
She's not biased or anything.
Not at all. Not at all. But if authors want to get in touch with Victoria, they can find you at your website at bluepenbooks.com, or they can learn more about you at victoriagriffin.com, which is your author page, your author website, which you'll learn a little bit more about where her short stories are. And also do you have a newsletter for Victoria Griffin?
No, just Blue Pen.
Just Blue Pen. Okay.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, because when you have a release, then we want to all know about it. It's okay. I'll probably tell you anyway, but I'll let everybody know when there's a book to read. I promise.
You might know before I do.
Yeah. I doubt that. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This was a lot of fun. It's always good to chat with you.
Yes.
Our calls are never short, and
we have a way of talking for a while, don't we?
We do. It's a very broad conversation, but it always comes back to manuscripts. It always comes back to writing. So it's but we have a lot in common as well. So
yes,
that helps. But thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure to have you on Book Banter. And thank you, friends, for joining us. And it's time to grab a book and get cozy. It is Friday, after all, if you're watching this live. So have a great weekend, everyone. And we will see you next time on Book Banter. Bye.
Bye.